Have you ever noticed that the harder you chase after something, the further it seems to drift away? That the more intensely you desire something, the more elusive it becomes? It's as if the very act of longing creates a barrier, an invisible wall that pushes what you want just out of reach. Why is it that the more you wait for a message, the more silence you receive? Or the more you yearn to be seen, to be truly understood, the more invisible you feel? This isn't because you're unworthy. It's not because fate is cruel or the universe is ignoring you. The reason lies beneath the surface, in the silent, unspoken energy that you emit, a signal so subtle yet powerful that it shapes your reality without a word. Every time you long for something from a place of emptiness, you are vibrating lack, and anything born of lack carries with it an energetic message. I am incomplete without this. I am not enough. It's not in the words you speak, or even in the calm you try to maintain. It's in the quiet field of energy that surrounds you, more honest, more revealing than any carefully chosen phrase. Even when you smile politely, breathe deeply, or tell yourself that everything is okay, the truth of your vibration speaks louder than any performance. Reality doesn't respond to thoughts alone. It responds to the frequency you hold. And as long as your energy is chasing, grasping, or yearning, that is the exact moment when you are, often unconsciously, repelling the very thing you desire. It slips through your fingers not by chance, but because the signal you are broadcasting is rooted in scarcity, not wholeness. This is not merely a story about desire, it is a story about vibration. Only when you stop running after, stop trying to control, and stop silently affirming your lack, can you return to your true center. In that still, centered space, something remarkable happens. You begin to radiate. You no longer need to pull things toward you, because your presence itself becomes magnetic. Let's explore this deeper through the first foundational theory, consciousness and vibration. Not all vibrations can be heard, but they can be felt. They change the atmosphere of a room without a sound. Have you ever seen someone enter a space without doing or saying anything, yet all eyes naturally shift toward them? There is something about their energy, quiet but commanding. On the other hand, there are people who, despite their best efforts, cause discomfort or heaviness in others. They may speak kindly, act decently, but something feels off. That off isn't in what they say, it's in what they carry. This is the energy field, and the energy field never lies. Carl Jung, though he did not use the term vibrating energy in the modern spiritual sense, understood this deeply. He saw consciousness, both the known and the unknown aspects of the mind, as a magnetic force that shapes reality. When you emit energy born from craving, from the urge to control, or from a deep-rooted anxiety, you are unconsciously transmitting a signal. I am missing something. I am afraid. I am not enough. And the universe, along with the people around you, doesn't respond to your declarations or affirmations. It responds to that vibration, not to what you say, but to what you are. In analytical psychology, Jung explained that every longing that stems from a wounded ego awakens what he called the shadow, the part of ourselves we deny, suppress, or fear. The shadow is not just the darkness inside us, it also includes our hidden vulnerabilities, the truths we dare not admit. When you pursue love because you fear being alone, you are not acting from wholeness, but from your shadow, the belief that you are incomplete by yourself. When you strive for success in an attempt to prove your worth, you act not from inspiration, but from an inner fracture. Jung described this mechanism as projection, the unconscious tendency to cast the parts of ourselves we haven't integrated onto the external world. In Ion Researches into the Phenomenology of the Self, he wrote, "Projections change the world into a replica of one's own unknown face." In other words, we don't see the world as it is, we see it as a mirror of our unhealed wounds. Now picture this. You step into a new relationship. On the outside, you seem confident, relaxed, independent. You say you need nothing, but internally, you're on edge. You check your phone every few minutes, waiting for a reply. Your mind spins with possible reasons for silence. You imagine worst-case scenarios. You wonder, did I say something wrong? Do they still care? This invisible pull, this emotional static, is a textbook vibration of lack. Even if your words are composed, your energy speaks otherwise. The other person feels it, not through what you say, but through the subtle tension in your gaze, the hesitation in your tone, the quiet space between your words. And what happens next is not rejection out of dislike, but a quiet withdrawal. Because few people are willing to enter an energetic space that demands to be filled. Jung observed that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Until you uncover the real motivation beneath your actions, that unseen force will continue to lead you, and you'll mistake it for destiny. Many people attempt to attract the things they want. They follow teachings about the law of attraction, repeat daily affirmations, and visualize ideal futures. But what they fail to realize is this: you don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. If your core energy vibrates with fear, with a sense of lacking, or with insecurity about your worth, then your entire being is radiating a crystal clear message. I do not have it. I am not enough. And by the law of frequency, you will attract experiences that reinforce that reality. The universe doesn't play favorites. It simply mirrors the signal you send. When your energy vibrates with fear, inadequacy, or the sense that something is missing, you unknowingly invite more of that lack into your life. You begin to see it everywhere, in the indifferent reactions of people, in missed opportunities that seem to slip right through your fingers, and in relationships that consistently reflect your self-doubt back to you like a painful echo. Carl Jung drew a powerful and essential distinction between two forces within us, the ego and the soul. The ego is the part of you that is always striving, eager to control outcomes, make plans, hold on tightly, and prove your worth to the world. It is the voice that says, I must do something to be chosen. I must hold on to avoid being left behind. The soul, on the other hand, carries no such urgency. It doesn't need validation or applause to exist. The soul is quietly present, rooted in a truth that does not waver. When you live from ego, you feel constant pressure to act, to perform, to be seen, to secure love or success. But when you begin to live from the soul, something within you shifts. The need to pursue fades because you finally recognize, I am myself. I am enough as I am. And from that stillness arises a deeper understanding. If something is meant to stay in your life, it will. Not because you clung to it, but because it belongs. In The Undiscovered Self, Jung wrote that the soul demands your truth, not your loyalty to conformity. It doesn't require you to twist yourself to please others or to meet the world's expectations. It asks for something far more courageous, that you live in harmony with your inner truth, no matter how quiet or unconventional that truth may be. Then here's the deeper layer. Vibrations born of lack are not merely signals of desire, they are rooted in fear, specifically the fear of abandonment. These are the echoes of unhealed memories, of wounds that belong not to the adult self, but to the inner child who is still waiting for someone to finally come and whisper, you are worthy, you are enough. But here is the harsh truth. No one can offer that from the outside, unless you have first declared it within, until your own energy says it for you, quietly, but with certainty. I am whole. The world cannot reflect it back. As Jung profoundly stated, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. You no longer need to search in the world for what can only be found within. What you are seeking isn't somewhere far ahead. It's hidden in the frequency you emit in every moment, in every interaction, in every silent hope. And the beautiful paradox is this: when you shift that frequency from begging to being, from expectation to calm presence, from anxiety to quiet trust, You will find that you no longer need to chase. The things meant for you will begin to find you, not because you've finally done everything right, but because you have become aligned with who you truly are. This leads us into the second core insight, and it begins with a story. Story 1, Carla. And that is the profound truth Jung wants us to understand at the deepest level. You do not attract by what you wish for, you attract by what you are. When the energy within you is constantly radiating lack, waiting, or the deep fear of being left behind, then your external world cannot help but mirror that. You begin to live in a reality shaped not by intention, but by unresolved emotion. To understand how this principle shows up not just in theory but in real life, we turn to the story of Carla, a strikingly real and human example of what Jung referred to as the psychic wound that cries louder than words. Carla is a brilliant, independent, and deeply self-aware woman. At the age of 34, she endured a heartbreak so deep it shattered the emotional foundation of her life. The man she had loved had been her entire world, and when he left, that world collapsed. But Carla didn't run from the pain. She didn't distract herself or numb her heart. Instead, she did what many would call the ideal path of healing. She read countless books on emotional recovery and spiritual growth. She journaled, she meditated, she enrolled in therapy and personal development courses. She cared for her body, her mind, and her heart. On the surface, Carla became the perfect image of a woman who had conquered her past. Her friends admired her. She looked whole. She sounded healed. But something kept happening, again and again. Each time she began a new relationship, even when the connection seemed warm, respectful, and full of potential, things always followed the same cycle. Slowly but surely, the other person began to drift away. The bond grew fragile. Uncertainty took root. And then, without warning or reason, it would break. Carla could not explain why. Everything she had done, she believed, should have worked. But the truth was not found in logic. It emerged in a moment of raw awakening. During a deep therapy session, when her therapist looked straight into her eyes and said, "Your energy is not waiting for love. It is begging for confirmation." That single sentence pierced through the layers of effort, through every affirmation, every meditation, every hour of healing work. In that moment, Carla realized she had not truly let go. She hadn't released the wound. She had simply dressed it well. Her outer life had transformed, but her inner energy was still trapped. Not in longing for a particular man, but in a pattern, a hidden hope that someone would finally come and heal what she couldn't. She wasn't living in the present with her new relationships. She was carrying the unconscious expectation that this time someone would finally be different, that this person would act in a way that proved she hadn't failed. She wasn't loving freely. She was waiting to be rescued. Carl Jung once said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." In other words, true transformation doesn't come from daydreaming about serenity. It comes from courageously facing the shadows we carry within. And the darkness that Carla needed to confront was not her ex-partner, nor the sorrow of her past heartbreak. It was something far more subtle and deeply rooted. The unconscious belief that she could never be whole unless someone else chose her. This hidden belief, this silent narrative playing beneath the surface, explains why all her positive, outward healing actions were still guided by an energy that quietly begged. It was not genuine self-liberation. It was disguised control. A quiet voice beneath her affirmations whispered, "I will love myself, but only if someone else proves that I'm lovable." But energy doesn't respond to conditions. The universe and the field of vibration around you does not evaluate the checklist you've completed, the therapy sessions, the self-care routines, the vision boards. It responds only to the true signal you are emitting beneath it all. And from that point onward, Carla's life began to mirror a single recurring lesson. When you demand confirmation, you are unintentionally vibrating lack. You are broadcasting, "I don't have enough." even if your words say otherwise. And as Jung so precisely observed, the universe doesn't answer to what you want, it answers to you. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But if you still seek someone else's validation to feel whole, then you are not yet living as your true self. You're a reflection of a reflection, a shadow seeking an image to define itself. After that pivotal therapy session, Carla didn't overhaul her strategies to get love. She didn't try harder, and she didn't suppress her feelings. What changed was her mindset. She began practicing awareness, not avoidance. When she met someone new and felt the urge to expect too much too soon, she paused. She didn't shame herself. She simply asked, "Am I truly loving this person? Or am I hoping they'll confirm that I am enough?" And that single question became a powerful mirror. This simple awareness was the turning point in her vibration, not because she started loving less or slowed things down, but because she shifted the source from which she loved. She began to give from a place of wholeness, not need. From that moment on, her energy no longer radiated a plea for approval. The frequency of "choose me so that I can be me" disappeared because she had finally chosen herself. And when you choose yourself, the world no longer feels like a battlefield where you must be saved. It becomes a canvas, a place to live, to share, to shine. There's no more chasing, no more proving, no more waiting. Only presence, only the quiet power of simply being. As Jung wrote in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. It's not rejection that frightens us most, it's the radical act of embracing every part of who we are. And when you finally do that, you realize something extraordinary. You no longer need anyone to confirm anything. You become a living field of completeness, radiating a calm and grounded presence where no signals of lack exist. And that is exactly why all the things you've ever sought finally begin to find you. Number 3, mechanism of the inner world and Jung's analysis. When Carla stopped seeking confirmation from others, the transformation wasn't just emotional, it became existential. She didn't just change how she loved, she stepped into a new dimension of being. She started confronting the inner mechanisms that had quietly ruled her decisions and patterns for years. And this is where Jung's depth psychology offers powerful insight. According to Jung, every experience we encounter, whether it's connection, rejection, or repeated emotional disappointments, originates from the psychological energy field we emit. That field comes from the deepest layers of the self. He made a clear distinction between ego-driven desire and what he called the call of the self. When the ego wants something, not from love, but from emptiness, it triggers the unhealed, fragmented parts of our psyche. Jung called these fragments the shadow. These shadow elements don't disappear just because you practice positivity. In fact, the more you suppress them, the more power they gain. They begin to shape the frequency you emit into the world. The more you pretend to be someone you're not, just to be accepted or to avoid vulnerability, the more you unknowingly live out a version of yourself that is only a mirror of unacknowledged pain. Not because you're fake, but because you've never truly looked at where your desire comes from, and most of the time, it begins in lack. Have you ever walked into a room and felt that something was off about someone, even though they were smiling brightly? Have you ever heard someone declare they've moved on, yet sensed a lingering sadness that words could not hide? What you were perceiving wasn't magic, it was vibration. It was the energy of someone's truth leaking through their mask. This is the phenomenon of energy, not mystical or abstract, but real and deeply psychological. Jung believed that consciousness is not just made up of thoughts or words, but of emotionally charged images, powerful imprints that live in the unconscious. These images accumulate over time, shaping our inner world and radiating outward like frequencies. In Man and His Symbols, Jung explained, "The psyche consists essentially of images, It is a self-regulating system that expresses itself in images. So when you walk into a space and your presence says more than your mouth ever could, that's not coincidence. That's the language of energy speaking for you. Drop a like in the comments if you've ever sensed someone's energy simply by their presence. Listen on, because what you are about to realize may change how you connect with yourself. It might shift the way you understand why, even when you say, "I'm fine, I've let go," or "I feel confident," others still seem to pick up on something else, something unspoken. If the true vibration inside you is trembling, no amount of convincing words can mask it. The ego may try to paint a confident picture. It may insist that everything is okay, but energy doesn't lie. The real danger arises when the ego operates from a place of fear, yet dresses it up with a positive label. "I'm just trying," or "I'm in love," we say, while internally fear grips us. And that's when the shadow becomes most powerful. As Jung warned, facing the shadow side of our nature is not just a psychological task, it is a moral one. This is the very essence of what he called individuation, the integration of our full selves, not just the light, but also the parts hidden in darkness, control, fear, insecurity. Only when you dare to look directly at the vibration that arises from these shadowy places do you begin the true journey of individuation. A journey not toward becoming better, but toward becoming whole. In Jung's view, individuation isn't about improvement, it's about returning to the center of the self, where every inner fragment is acknowledged, accepted, and reconnected. Nothing is exiled, nothing is denied. When you still emit a vibration born of lack, even subtly, you are operating from the wounded ego. And no matter how peaceful your words sound, the signal your energy sends will reveal otherwise. But when you begin to live from your center, from the self, you no longer need to persuade, to pursue, or to control outcomes. You simply are. You exist with a quiet, powerful inner richness. You stop sending out the silent plea, "Come to me so I can feel whole." And instead, your very presence becomes a declaration. "I am myself, and I am enough." So ask yourself, are you living from the center of your being, or are you unconsciously emitting a vibration that is begging for someone, anyone, to tell you that you are worthy? Drop a comment if you feel called to, because simply becoming aware of that distinction is often the first real step in shifting your frequency. There is a subtle, profound truth Jung recognized early in his work. People do not love you for what you do. They are drawn or repelled by the energy you unconsciously radiate. And if that energy field is formed from unintegrated shadow, it will attract people and experiences that activate your wound. Not to hurt you, but to show you where your healing is incomplete. The world becomes a mirror not of your intentions, but of your vibration. In Ion, Jung wrote that the self is not only the center of the psyche, but the total circumference. It encompasses both consciousness and the unconscious. The self is not a piece of who you are, it is the whole. It includes both your light and your darkness, your clarity and your confusion. So if you've ever wondered why you keep attracting the same type of person, or why you still feel misunderstood, even when you've worked so hard on yourself, maybe the answer doesn't lie in your words or thoughts. Maybe it lies in the frequency you're still carrying. Only when you have the courage to turn inward, not to fix, not to hide, but to integrate every piece of yourself, will you arrive at what Jung called the wholeness of the self. In that sacred state, there is no more chasing, no more proving, no more pleading. You stop sending out that desperate signal because you are finally transmitting the truth of who you are. Are you ready to return to the center of yourself? If so, comment just one word: present. Because being fully present, not waiting, not proving, just being, is what makes your energy magnetic. And when you exist in that state, you no longer need to seek. Everything that truly resonates with you begins to find its way toward you. Number 4, Story 2, Natalia. After understanding how energy emitted from a wounded ego can unconsciously attract repeating emotional experiences, we now arrive at an even more revealing truth. Awareness alone, while powerful, is not the same as liberation. The intellect may say, "I've let go." The voice inside your head might insist, "I've moved on." But if your energy still sends a signal of holding on, of clinging, of needing proof, you remain on the same frequency. And the world, ever mirroring your inner state, will reflect that vibration back to you. It doesn't matter how many books you've read, how many videos you've watched, or even how many times you've told yourself you're healed. If the energy hasn't changed, the experience won't either. Natalia's story offers a clear and heartfelt example of this universal dynamic. At age 40, Natalia was a woman of great depth and quiet strength. She had emerged from a toxic relationship that had nearly shattered her spirit. It was the kind of relationship that doesn't just break your heart, it empties your soul. But she survived. In the aftermath, she poured herself into rebuilding. She studied the concept of self-love. She committed to therapy. She meditated, journaled, and even launched a small blog to share her healing journey with others. From the outside, people saw a woman who had transcended her past. And Natalia believed it too. She felt grounded, rejuvenated, open, until a new man entered her life. At first, Natalia felt calm, centered. She approached things with wisdom and balance, but just days into their early conversations, she noticed subtle shifts. She started checking her phone more frequently, overanalyzing each message, wondering what every word meant. When he went silent, even briefly, a ripple of anxiety would rise in her chest. She never voiced it out loud. She didn't act impulsively. But in her mind, a storm began to swirl. Why hasn't he replied? Did I say something wrong? Is this going to end just like before? And in one pivotal therapy session, her therapist observed quietly, then said, "Your mind has let go, but your energy is still holding on." Natalia was stunned. It was as if something inside her had been shattered open, not by external judgment, but by the quiet truth finally surfacing within herself. She had never imagined that she could be faking it to herself, pretending not to others, but inwardly, masking her deepest fear with rituals of growth and healing. The truth was difficult to swallow. All her efforts, the meditation, the journaling, the emotional sharing, had been fueled by a desperate internal need, a drive not simply to grow, but to ensure she would never become that broken version of herself again. What was behind this drive? At its core, it was a subconscious bargain. If I do all the right things, I can guarantee that next time will be different. But deep within, her energy was still whispering the same old message. I need something outside of me to feel safe. I need something, or someone, to ensure I won't be hurt again. Carl Jung wrote in the Red Book, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. No awakening occurs without passing through pain." Natalia wasn't wrong in believing that she had let go. She had simply not reached the full depth of that truth. Her conscious mind had moved forward, but her energy still carried unprocessed fear. And energy, especially when it remains unconscious, acts like a repeating script. You change the cast, you switch environments, roles, and relationships, but the emotional plot, it loops. The same abandonment, the same misunderstanding, the same painful sense of not being enough. Jung described this as the compulsion to repeat, the unconscious drive to relive an unresolved emotional experience until it is seen, integrated, and healed. In Psychology and Alchemy, he wrote, "The patient can only get well when he begins to see the contents of the unconscious and assimilate them into the total personality." In other words, true healing only begins when you dare to confront the hidden emotional material within and bring it home. Because whether or not you realize it, your vibration speaks before your words do. People don't withdraw from you because something is wrong with you. They withdraw, often unconsciously, because they sense an unspoken pressure, a field of energy that's pleading to be filled. It's not about the words you say, It's about the invisible signal you transmit. Natalia never uttered a single plea for reassurance, but her energy field, subtle, silent, was emitting a message loud and clear. Give me certainty. Protect me from pain. Show me I won't be hurt again. And when that kind of energy shows up in a connection, love cannot move freely. It becomes distorted, weighted by an invisible burden, a pressure to heal something only you can heal for yourself. So if you've ever found yourself asking, why do I keep attracting the same kind of person? Maybe it's time to stop interrogating the world and instead gently ask yourself, what am I emitting that I dare not admit? Connection cannot be nurtured on a foundation built from fear. The more you search for safety in others, the further you drift from your own center. And as Jung reminded us, the world does not respond to what you want, it responds to what you are. Until you change the frequency you are radiating, you will continue to play the same emotional drama, just under a different title. But here's the hopeful part. The moment you start to recognize this pattern, as Natalia did, you've already begun to shift your energy, you've already started to reclaim your power, and that awareness alone, even without anyone's approval or validation, is enough to begin transforming your entire story. Number 5, the difference between control and surrender. Imagine this. You glance at your phone, exhale and think, I'm done. I won't text anymore. I'm fine. But just minutes later, almost involuntarily, your hand moves. You unlock your phone. You wait. You check for that tiny notification, hoping for a message, a signal, anything to prove you're still cared for. On the surface, you're telling yourself, I'm letting go. But beneath that, your entire nervous system is on edge. Your body is tight. Your breath is shallow. Your mind is running wild with silent what-ifs. That's not peace. That's not surrender. That's control disguised as silence. And this is where a difficult but life-altering lesson begins to reveal itself. The gap between our words and our energy, between what we intend and what we actually radiate. Control is not strength. It is a survival mechanism, a reflex of the unhealed ego, trying to keep pain from returning. Natalia didn't learn this from theory. She learned it the hard way, through experience, through the way her body reacted to uncertainty, through the way her energy tensed every time a new connection didn't behave predictably. And in that tension, the doorway cracked open, the door between control and surrender. Not through ideas, through vibration. We often mistake control for maturity, for responsibility, even for love. We think that doing something, taking action, intervening, fixing, will keep everything from falling apart. But the truth is, control is contraction. It is fear wrapped in reason. It's the ego stepping in to manage what the soul has not yet learned to sit with. Jung taught that the ego tries to control what the soul has not yet integrated. So we overanalyze. We speculate, we pull away or press in. We even perform indifference, not because we're detached, but because we're afraid to feel. That's how control becomes a wound. You don't act from calm clarity, you act from fear, and you don't even know it. Now, imagine you begin a new relationship. The other person grows a little distant for a day. Instantly, you feel unsettled. So you react. You send a text. You wait. You say nothing to see if they notice. You ask indirect questions, hoping to interpret their emotional state. Are these actions inherently wrong? Not necessarily. But what if you asked yourself this instead? What is the state of my energy while doing this? If your action is rooted in anxiety, fear of rejection, or inability to sit with uncertainty, then you're not connecting. You're controlling. Jung spoke not only about behavior, but about the motive beneath it. He emphasized that transformation doesn't begin with what we do, but with why we do it. He once wrote that, when an inner situation remains unconscious, it appears outside as fate. In other words, if you fail to recognize that your actions are being governed by a hidden fear, especially the fear of losing control, you will continue to unconsciously invite situations that reflect that fear right back to you. You'll attract patterns that force you to either tighten your grip on control or finally awaken to what lies beneath. It becomes a cycle. Either you begin living from your inner center, or you keep directing your life based on the fear of being left, forgotten, or abandoned. Recognizing this truth is the first real step toward letting go, not from exhaustion, but from awakened awareness. Surrender is not standing still, waiting passively for a miracle. It's not inaction. It is, in fact, the strongest act of a mind that is truly at rest in itself. Surrender happens when you no longer feel the urge to manipulate, chase, or force reality to conform to an ego-crafted storyline. It's when you release the need to constantly check, interpret, or manage outcomes, because you trust that what is meant for you will come, naturally and without struggle. And what's not meant for you, holding on to it will only create pain. A powerful illustration of this comes from the healing journey of Lena. When she entered a new relationship, everything initially felt harmonious and peaceful. Conversations flowed, affection was natural, and she felt aligned. But over time, subtle moments began to trigger old patterns. Every time her partner went quiet or paused before replying, Lena started overanalyzing, breaking down every message, every punctuation mark, every delay. Outwardly, she remained composed. She didn't lash out or make accusations. But internally, she was tightening, squeezing herself and her partner with unspoken expectations, silent anxieties, and a quiet desperation for reassurance. As a result, the energy between them began to subtly shift. Something became heavy. Eventually, when she asked what was wrong, her partner could only respond with confusion. "I don't know, it just feels heavy." That's when Lena realized the truth. It wasn't that her partner was wrong or distant or careless. It was that she was still operating from control, disguised as a gentle desire to understand. Her old energy had returned. Beneath her calm words, she was bracing herself against abandonment. Jung didn't teach letting go as a trick or technique. He saw it as a milestone of inner maturity. He taught that surrender is not weakness. It's the courageous decision to stop waging war against yourself. It is the moment you no longer need certainty to feel safe, no longer require someone's approval to feel loved, and no longer reach for control to guard against abandonment. If you're still living in the energy of clinging to avoid loss, remember, control doesn't truly protect you. It only keeps you away from real peace, from real intimacy, from real living. Sometimes the most powerful step is the one you don't take. The most transformational move is the one that stands still. To pause, not out of paralysis, but out of presence, and feel, what am I still holding on to from fear rather than from love? Maybe you've seen yourself acting from control, all while telling yourself you were simply seeking reassurance that you are not alone. But now, as you awaken, you face a new choice. If you feel ready, share the phrase, "I am letting go." Because the moment you choose to step out of control-based energy and into a magnetic state of trust, you no longer have to pull life toward you. Life comes naturally, gracefully to meet you there. Number 6, the power of presence. But make no mistake, surrender does not mean you disappear. Not controlling does not mean becoming passive. This brings us to a profound and often misunderstood concept, one that lies at the heart of Carl Jung's philosophy. He called it the true center of spiritual life, the power of presence. If control is action born of fear, then presence is being rooted in wholeness. It doesn't arise from doing. It radiates from a grounded, stable inner state. Presence demands nothing from the world. It doesn't chase love, defend itself, or seek affirmation. It simply is. Vibrational presence isn't measured by how long you can meditate. It isn't found in silence for silence's sake. It is the living field of energy you emit when your mind, emotions, and body are all resting in the same moment, not racing into the future or replaying the past. When you are truly here, not distracted by fear, expectation, or mental noise, you step into real presence. In The Undiscovered Self, Jung wrote, "Freedom stretches only as far as the limits of our consciousness." If you are not fully present, you are still operating within the unconscious realm of reactivity. Your energy doesn't get to choose, it simply reacts. Think back to a time when someone entered a room, and without speaking a word, they made you feel safe. Maybe they weren't particularly charming, loud, or conventionally attractive, but their energy said, "I'm here." No pretense, no performance, just presence. That's the power Jung pointed to. No theatrics, no tactics, just authentic presence. And yet, the entire space shifted. Because when you're truly present with yourself, you don't need to impress anyone. You become the impression. If you're still reading, pause for just 5 seconds. Put your phone down, close your eyes. Now ask yourself, am I here with this moment, or is my mind somewhere else? This is a quiet test of presence. And if you realize that your body is seated, but your mind is wandering, that's okay, you are not alone. Presence doesn't arise from mere intention, it arises from practice. Jung described the journey back to the center of the self, individuation, as a process of peeling away illusions, old wounds, and unconscious habits, until nothing remains but your most authentic, unconditional presence. In Psychology and Alchemy, he wrote that the self is a union of opposites par excellence. Only when you stop striving to become someone smarter, better, more appealing, only when you cease performing growth, can you finally become fully present as your whole, undivided self. A beautiful example of this comes from Daniela's story. For years, she found herself caught in the same cycle. Meet someone new, feel a spark of excitement, then let anxiety slowly take over. She would begin to analyze every message, waiting for positive reactions just to feel safe. This was the pattern that had quietly drained Daniela. Every conversation felt like a test, every pause like a threat, and every interaction like something she had to manage. Though she longed for love and connection, all of it left her mentally and emotionally exhausted. Until one day, something within her shifted. She made what she later described as a decision of radical stillness. It wasn't that she pulled away from life itself. She simply stopped reacting to it. She stopped chasing connection, stopped strategizing conversations, stopped overanalyzing every response. And instead of trying to feel better, she gave herself a far greater gift. She committed to showing up more truthfully. Every day, she practiced simple presence. Not perfection, not control, just presence. In her breath, in the rhythm of her heartbeat, in the quiet spaces between her thoughts. She didn't force clarity, she didn't demand peace. She simply allowed herself to exist, without needing to change the moment. A week passed, then another. Nothing dramatic happened, no sudden breakthroughs, no emotional fireworks. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, Daniela realized something extraordinary. She no longer spiraled when she didn't receive a reply. She no longer treated each small shift in someone's tone or timing as a lifeline to be desperately held onto or interpreted. The smile indicated she felt clear. And from that clarity, something powerful began to occur. The connections that came into her life no longer replayed the same tired emotional scripts. There was no hidden tension, no quiet desperation, no controlling energy pulling behind the scenes. Why? Because she was no longer attracting from lack. She was vibrating from grounded presence. And presence doesn't beg. You may ask, how do I attain that kind of presence? The answer isn't in a checklist. It's not in a 3-step formula. It lies in letting go of the compulsion to always do, fix, or become. Jung never taught self-improvement as if we were machines to be upgraded. He didn't point us toward endless striving. Instead, He invited us to live fully as the self that already exists within. He wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that becoming doesn't come from chasing something new. And it comes from stopping long enough to realize you've always been here. So just be present. If that resonates, leave a single word in the comments. Present. Not as a YouTube habit, not as an obligation, but as a reminder that maybe, just maybe, you once forgot yourself somewhere along the way, and now you're finally returning. No more chasing, no more controlling, just presence. And from that sacred space, everything begins to shift. Not because of what you do, but because for the first time, you have truly become yourself. Number 7, vibrational detachment. But presence, though powerful, doesn't fall into your lap like a sudden blessing. It is not a gift. It's a practice, a result of inner discipline, a quiet willingness to stop reacting, to observe instead of control, and to face the parts of yourself you once tried to silence with distraction. Presence cannot thrive in a mind ruled by anxiety. And when your thoughts are racing, your nervous system on edge, that's your invitation to enter a key Jungian practice, vibrational detachment. Now don't misunderstand. This is not about becoming cold or emotionally shut down. Vibrational detachment is not indifference. It is not numbness. It is the highest form of self-loyalty. It means choosing not to betray yourself for the sake of keeping an unhealthy connection alive. It begins the moment you dare to notice the subtle ways your energy is still pursuing. Not because you're weak, but because you've grown familiar with the frequency of dependence. That vibration of need might not speak with words, but it echoes in your tone, your glances, your silences, your messages. You may have felt it, how hard it is to bear even a moment of uncertainty in a relationship. A brief pause in response time becomes unbearable. Each minute without a reply sends your thoughts spiraling. Your imagination races. Your fingers itch to act, to text, to ask, to check their status. But pause for a moment. That isn't your true self. That is the frequency of lack hijacking your system. Jung warned in The Psychology of the Transference that an activated complex puts us momentarily under the control of an autonomous personality. This means that when our inner wounds are triggered, they temporarily take over our behavior. We think we are responding rationally, but in truth, we are being manipulated from within by unhealed parts of ourselves. You may find yourself unable to tolerate not knowing what the other person thinks or feels. You crave confirmation. You scan for signs. You long for repeated assurances, not out of joy, but because your sense of safety depends on it. That kind of craving doesn't come from the present. It arises from a hidden anxiety that has been with you for a long time, perhaps for years, perhaps since childhood. If you find yourself easily triggered, emotionally shaken by silence, constantly needing explanations or responses to feel steady, it may not be love you're expressing. It may be that you are communicating through the vibration of lack. And the world senses it. Even if you never speak a word, your energy becomes a quiet cry for help. But here's the truth. The way out of this invisible cycle is not in doing more. It begins by learning to pause and stop at the moment the impulse arises. To notice the urge to send that unnecessary message. The moment you feel compelled to do something, just to hold the connection, pause. That very urge, though subtle, is a signal worth listening to. Jung pointed out in the Red Book that in each of us there is one we do not know, who speaks to us in dreams, telling us how differently he sees us from how we see ourselves. What does this mean? It means there's a deeper part of you, an inner witness who does not operate from fear or the need to react. That part of you doesn't grasp, chase, or overanalyze. It simply watches, waits, and speaks quietly when you make space for stillness. When you pause, truly pause, you begin to hear that part, the self beneath the noise. You begin to return to a space within that needs no validation, no manipulation, no defense. And in that stillness, your healing begins. You can start with something very simple. Do nothing for the first 3 minutes of restlessness. No distractions, no phone, no escape. It's just your breath, your body, your awareness. Let yourself be still, even when every part of your mind wants to act. And then gently ask, do I want to act because I'm fully present or because I'm afraid? That small inquiry is the foundation of vibrational detachment. This isn't spiritual theory, it's an energetic practice. To detach vibrationally means to act not from anxiety, but from the calm clarity of your center. It is choosing to live moment by moment without being hijacked by unconscious fears. Create a daily space of silence, even if just for 10 minutes. No screens, no conversations. Just you, your inhale, your exhale, the quiet rhythm of being. And in that silence, say softly, I do not chase, I do not cling, I am present. You don't have to believe it completely right away. That's okay. Just repeat it again and again. Let it reprogram the body, imprint a new vibration in your nervous system. Bit by bit, your energy will begin to shift. And if, at any point, you return to that old question, how do I become loved? Pause. Turn the question inward. Invert it. Ask instead, which part of me still doesn't believe I am already worthy? Jung reminds us with piercing clarity. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Vibrational detachment is not about trying harder, it's about becoming more awake. It's about noticing what's really going on inside you and choosing not to repeat it. It's about releasing the cycle, not because you're tired, but because you're finally aware. And here's the miracle. When you stop chasing, and when you stop demanding, when you stop striving just to be seen, you begin to become what you were always seeking. You stop sending out subtle signals of fear or lack. You stop manipulating energy with hidden anxiety. You no longer need someone to understand you in order to feel worthy, because you've already begun to understand yourself. You attract not through tactics or sweetness or perfection, but through the authentic frequency of who you are. When you are fully present, no longer denying or abandoning yourself, something profound begins to happen. You don't chase, you radiate. And in that radiance, there is no need to attract. You don't need to reach outward, you simply remain aligned with your own truth. True radiance doesn't come from effort. It arises naturally from clarity, from alignment, from the energy of life flowing through you without resistance. When you stop pursuing, not only in action, but also in the vibration beneath your action, you stop running toward what you want. Instead, you remain rooted in your truth. And from that still, quiet place, you emit something irresistible. It is not loud. It is not desperate. It is a silence full of strength, a magnetic calm that allows what doesn't belong to fall away, and what is right for you to find its way. You don't need to become someone else. You only need to return to the center of yourself. Let your stillness speak for you. Let your energy walk into a room before you do. Let the fullness within you become your unspoken language, the silent invitation the world cannot ignore. Because when you've chosen yourself, fully and truly, you no longer need to be chosen. You are already home. And that, more than anything, is the vibration no one can resist. If these insights touch the depths of your being, if they stir the quiet longing in you to live more truthfully, to love from within, and to heal without begging, then don't leave yet. Subscribe to continue this journey back to yourself, to the place where you no longer need to chase anything. Because everything essential has always been within you.